In this tutorial, I'm going over editing audio. I'm using this project, which is a video editing class of mine project, but this editing audio video will apply to any audio editing that you need to do, really. So I'm just using this as an example. In this current project, all we have here is some NAT sound. So NAT sound is any sound that's attached to a B-roll clip. Now you may be tempted to get rid of it, especially if it sounds like this, but it is actually super important to your edit because viewers expect to hear the sound associated with the visual they're seeing. If you don't include that NAT sound, it's going to feel like they're watching through glass and they're going to feel disconnected from your video, like it's not real. So to make your videos more realistic, you're going to use NAT sound, but you don't want it to sound like this. That's just garbage and distracting. So we're going to learn how to edit that so that it sounds good. Now, NAT sound is rarely dominant audio. Maybe if you have a NAT pop or something like that. If you're in my class, we'll learn about that at a later point. But for the most part, NAT sound is going to be in the background for most of your video. So you always want to edit your dominant sound first. In this example, there is no narration unless you've chosen to record some yourself, and there's no dialogue or sound bites or anybody talking. So in this example, the music is going to be the dominant audio. If you are using narration or editing a project that has anybody talking, that is always your dominant audio, and then your music, if you're including it, will be in the background. So it doesn't really matter for editing purposes what your dominant audio is. Just know for your project you should figure that out because that is the first thing you're going to edit in terms of audio, and you're going to edit everything else in reference to it. For this example, I've downloaded some music from the free YouTube audio library. If you are currently a CSU or journalism student, you can get access to Universal Music Library, which is the one I recommend if you don't have access to that. Email your instructor. But if not, just use this YouTube audio library as a backup, or this is free to everybody. So I've downloaded a song there. Very important that I take this song from my downloads and put it with the rest of my footage. So in this project, I have the rest of my footage here under project 1, and I'm just going to make sure that I import the song from there. I just hit the download button on the YouTube audio library and it went to downloads. So now I'm going to import from that new folder, because if you saw my importing an Intro to Premiere Pro tutorial, you need to import from your hard drive or a similar place to your project. Because Premiere Pro is going to just connect to that file and it's not actually going to save it in Premiere Pro. So now I'm going to just drag and drop it into my import window and import it like a regular video clip. Now I want to use most of this whole song, so I'm just going to drag and drop this on the bottom of my timeline here. I've just got these clips in a random order for demonstration purposes, and I've just picked what seemed like not a horrible song. Now, we've determined that since there is nobody talking in this video, that my dominant sound is going to be my music. Now, I've just gone ahead and expanded these little layers out, so these tracks, you can just click and drag and make those bigger, and this is just to see your waveforms. These are waveforms, and make your audio editing easier. So in order to start audio editing, I'm going to solo, so hit this S button, so that only the music is playing. Only this sound on this track is going to play. So there we go, my song is playing underneath my video, but I can't hear my NAT sound. Now I'm going to go ahead and use this, my little arrow tool, make sure I'm on that, and drag this down. And then I'm going to watch where these bars jump. Now for anything broadcast standards, or any of my classes, I say -12 decibels, so audio is measured in decibels. That's where it is, where my mouse is right here. For YouTube, I recommend around -6 decibels because -12 sounds really soft on YouTube. So -12 is where we're going to edit to. When somebody says edit your audio to -12, they're always talking about your dominant audio because that's going to be the loudest, and everything else is edited in reference to that using your ears. So let's edit this to -12. So I'm just going to play through the song, and I'm just going to drag this until it is kind of bouncing around that -12 mark. Oop, my finger slipped there. Let me make this bigger so I have more flexibility. Maybe the smidge louder. There we go. That's a little over. For broadcast standards, you wouldn't want it to bounce over -12 at all, but for this, it works quite well. So now that that is balanced, and we've got that around -12, this would be perfect for my class. If you are submitting for my class, maybe the tiniest smidge lower. Let's go a little bit. There we go. Perfect. That's what I'm looking for, because when I watch your projects, I'm going to look for those levels. And now I'm going to unselect solo so I can now hear my NAT sound. So the key with NAT sound or any background audio, so if your music's your background audio, you want it to be audible but not overwhelming and competing with your dominant audio. So you're going to go individually and drag these clips down. So a little trick that you can do, so when you start with your clips, everything's going to be in the middle here. This little white line that allows you to edit your audio is going to be super loud. So what you can do, if it's just super loud overall, is you can do a blanket drop before you edit those clips individually. So I can just highlight everything here, right click, go to audio gain, and say adjust gain by, and let's drop it by, let's see what 10 decibels sounds like. So -10 decibels. If you wanted to increase, you just take the minus away. And I'm just guessing here. I've had some experience editing these types of things, but just type in a number between, 1 and 15 and see what works. You can always come back and change this, and this is going to blanket drop everything here. So it'll get me to closer baseline so that I don't have to make big changes to everything, and just make it easier to listen to while I'm editing other things too. So this is still pretty loud and overwhelming, so I'm going to go back into my audio gain, maybe drop it another 5 decibels and see what that sounds like. Okay. Still pretty loud. Let's drop it a few more before I start doing my individual edits. Say about let's do another -5 and see what happens. There we go. Now we're getting closer to what I'm looking for, but it's still loud. So there I've already dropped in -20 decibels, so you could have started there. And I'm just going to go through and drag this down as I'm listening to it. Until it sounds audible but not overwhelming. And every clip's going to be a little different. The NAT sound is clearly very prominent in this, so it does sound a little intense. So this is maybe lower than, say, birds buzzing and bees buzzing or birds chirping in background footage, maybe a little higher and less overwhelming. So this is going to be pretty low, but you don't want it so low that the viewer can't hear it. So let's take a listen to these first few shots. That's about good. It's a little low in comparison. It's a little high. Haven't dropped that one yet. And just going on until it is audible but not overwhelming. So let's listen again. Might drop this one a little, like a smidge, but right now it's not competing too much and it sounds pretty solid. Maybe a tiniest smidge louder. But this takes a lot of time. This is a big part of audio editing. So you're going to edit each clip individually. So let's say you have some really low NAT sound and you've brought it all the way to the top here and it's not loud enough, or some really low dominant audio, then you can go back into our gain option here. So you can right click on it, hit audio gain, and you can say adjust gain by -10 and or not -10, by 10 decibels, and then it'll just make those waveforms bigger and give you more room to play with here. You may have seen the set gain to option and you may think, hey Jesse, why don't you just say set gain to -12 and not deal with this nonsense? It doesn't quite work that way. It kind of averages out the peaks. Occasionally it works, but for the most times, even when you set it to -12, it's just going to hover like the average around there. and it's not gonna get it perfect. So you could give that a shot. If it works, great, but most times it's not gonna get it to -12, because what I'm looking at is this bar over here. That is your output audio volume, your audio levels. So there's just some basic audio editing tools. To more finesse things, there's this little pen tool, which you will use a lot when there's dialogue or more distinct sound, or let's say you want the sound to start loud and then to drop down. Maybe you want somebody to pay attention to it and then not later. You can just use this pen tool to make little points, and this is how the sound will be. So here it starts loud and it gradually gets lower over this period. So let's take a listen. There you go. And so let's say there was somebody yelling in the background and you wanted to get rid of it. You could make these little points, and you can make a certain part lower if you wanted to, had a really distracting sound, or somebody honked their horn in your footage, or they kind of started whispering and got quiet. You could use this pen tool to adjust things. Other things you can do to improve your audio editing, so I'm just hitting edit undo right now to get rid of these, is to use keyframe or to use dissolves. So I'm going to switch to my arrow tool here. I'm going to lock it so I don't have any dissolves in my videos. If you are editing this project for my video editing class, I don't want to see any dissolves between your footage. It's distracting. We're going to get to that later in the semester. Just edit clean cuts. But these little dissolves here between some of your audio clips, if it sounds jarring or if you hear a popping sound, you're going from really different distinct sounds, you could apply these little dissolves and you can kind of make them a little shorter, and sometimes it just makes it sound a little cleaner. So these are just some tricks to clean up your audio. And see how much cleaner that sounded as opposed to just dropping it, since these two sounds are very different from each other. Just a little trick, so no dissolve on the video, that's why I locked it here. And just a cleaner sounding transition. So that's the intro into editing audio. LinkedIn Learning has a ton more tutorials, as does YouTube, but this is just the crash course on some of the basic tips I like to give people on adjusting audio. So spend some time on it. It is time consuming, but be patient and your videos will thank you for it.